Happy Sunday. Let me get all of our things set and
Progress.
nice to see everybody. Let's start in a seat. A new spot. We'll get the tree up soon. So comfy seat that allows you to anchor and ground. Thinking about that idea of grounding. And from that positional awareness, let's bring some extra awareness to our breath input and output ports. So either the nose or the mouth. And start to feel the breath at the initiation or release points. Maybe initiation and release points. And then drift that awareness from the entry and exit to the base of the throat or the back of the throat. And then let that awareness travel from the back of the throat to the top of the lungs. Just your emphasis and awareness is at the top of the lungs through the inhale and the exhale portion of your breath. And then we'll drift to the bottom of the sternum diaphragm area, just at the upside down V of the rib cage. And then we'll drift our awareness from the diaphragm area to the bottom of the belly. Feeling the bottom of the belly land with each exhale. And then the next time you inhale from the bottom of the belly, we're going to feel the breath rise up to the diaphragm, to the top of the lungs, to the back of the throat, and leave the body. And then we'll reverse as we inhale that breath in, following it down and landing. Exhales, lifting that awareness up as the breath leaves. And then inhale, feeling the breath travel in. Converting to that exhale, and then from that landing, feeling the breath rise and leave the body. And then the next time that you exhale out, let's tuck our chin to our sternum space. And we're going to reverse the way we're experiencing the breath here. So chin tucks. As you exhale, we're going to feel the breath leaving the body and feel the settling sensation travel through base of the throat, high lungs, sternum, belly. And then as you inhale, the breath filling up, but we're reversing that energetic sensation or that physical sensation, pulling in. You're feeling the belly activate, feeling the diaphragm activate, feeling the high lungs activate, eventually the back of the throat. And then we reverse the breath and we exhale, and that settling sensation comes back in. Just truly mapping the physicality of the changes within the physicality as you breathe through the inhale and exhale cycle in the torso. And let's just stick with this for a couple more breaths. Really, the breath now is just happening, and we're paying attention to the body outside of the respiratory system and how it's responding to the breath cycle. And then eventually, when you've completed that second cycle of breath, let's bring our head back to neutral, and we'll just rotate over towards the left and to neutral, and then over towards the right and to neutral, and then chin lifts towards the ceiling. And head comes to neutral. Let's transition to hands on knees, tabletop. Before we get 100% settled in here, let's take our blanket or towel prop and from a shelf fold size, go to a hot dog size, and then just have that handy. Lay the fingers out nice and wide, create that neutrality in the spine, press the tops of the feet into the mat. Really think about that great alignment from the middle of the femur to the calcaneus bone, so that as you exhale and sink back into child's pose, the heel is more or less kind of middle of the glute or middle of the femur, just depending on that lower leg geometry. And then we'll inhale and rise back to tabletop. And we're going to dynamically move here. The biggest thing that I want you to keep in mind is as you come forward, make sure that you get all the way into the finger mound so that the hands hold the strength, and then exhale back, keeping those heels aligned in the middle of the body. And we'll just flow back and forth here. Inhales forward, exhales sinking back at our own pace, with our own length and duration of breath. And 2 more times in each direction here. So completing 2 more full cycles of movement. And then we'll eventually meet in tabletop. And from tabletop, we're going to take our blanket and let's just place it maybe just behind where the hands would be. So maybe an inch or 2 gap so that you can get into a traditional tabletop, but you have the blanket in between your thighs and your wrists. And then exhale and sink back. And we want the blanket here to give a little lift and alleviation of arm necessity. And then the forehead can ideally rest on your blanket. So If you need to come back just a touch more, see if you can find a spot where the forehead can rest and the arms are supported and held by the blanket. It's a pretty big child's pose ask this early in class. Anterior hip compression could be angry, shoulders could be angry. Angry might be the wrong word, but frustrated with your request. How about? So see if as you're here, the forehead can kind of be your little bit of alleviation of any of the cranky portions of your body. And we'll give ourselves 30 more seconds here. And then when your right handprints connect to the mat once again, we'll pull ourselves to tabletop. Let's slide that blanket or remove that blanket out from its space. And then take your, let's go seat back to heels. So keep the torso a little bit lifted here so you can see your hands. And then we're going to take our right hand and place it on top of our left. And then just lower your forehead, but keep your sternum lifted. So we have maybe like a 30-degree angle with the sternum. Forehead's just going to tuck here. And then activate the handprints down into your mat like they're gripping. Splay the fingers out wide and pull the shoulders back, trying to maximize the distance between the bottoms of the ears and the shoulder. So we're hands are anchored, but we're pulling the shoulders away from the hands to just give a little bit of length around that, the really soft, really delicate, supportive tissue, stabilizing tissue of the shoulder joint. And then right hand comes to its appropriate side of the mat, and we'll pull ourselves to tabletop. And we'll do the same thing on side two. So we set the seat back first, then the left hand comes over, then we tuck the head, then we splay the fingers and push and engage into those fingerprints, handprints, and pull the shoulders back towards the glutes. Really looking to just access the smaller musculature around the shoulder joints. And when you feel balanced, left hand returns to its appropriate side of the mat. Let's pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop. And let's take our seat back 50% towards child's pose. So we get a pretty good angle in that glute quad area. And then take yourself into a cat. So we're holding a little strength in the glutes, and we're going to roll up. And we're getting this low back flexion out of cat. So last week, you were in class last week, we did a little shift and we took our cat and we made it this big thoracic flexion. Here we're going the opposite way. So we're sinking back and we're getting the flexion requirement to be lower in the spine. And then pull yourself back forward to neutral. And then let's shift our shoulders forward just slightly. It's why we warm the shoulders up so much. And then drop your belly into cow. And again, we're pushing the requirement of the shape lower into the lumbar. And we're just breathing through a few cycles. And then we'll come back to neutral. Make sure you set that spinal column in neutral. And then when you're right, curl your toes. And let's find one little down dog here. This will be as active as we're going to get. Just peeling into that length, thinking about distancing from the handprints to the tailbone. And let's come down to hands and knees. And from hands and knees, we'll extend our legs out in front of us. And from that staff shape, nice tall vertical spine. Think about feeling structurally stacked here. And then let's really focus on a traditional forward fold, meaning that if the hamstrings are limiting us, we're going to bend them. So instead of just allowing for flexion here, we're thinking about neutrality in the spine. So we're coming forward. If we have to go to flexion, let's back that up or bend the knees even more so that we can stay as neutral as possible in the spine. And then you can utilize your breath cycles to continue to extend. And we'll give ourselves 30 more seconds here. And we'll walk up to a staff once again. Let's reconnect with our friend, the blanket fold. Still hot dog shape. This is going to come down behind us. And maybe give yourself 4 to 6 inches, not hard to see, you have so many colors going here, 4 to 6 inches of space between your tailbone and the blanket space. And then we're going straight down, aligning our spine with the middle of this prop, and then letting the arms just blossom open into cactus. Try to go palms up and fingers splayed out wide, even with the fingers relaxed. So there's this woman traveling around the planet, and she's offering seminars. And these seminars are titled The Magic of Life. And so this young man is walking down the street one day, sees an advertisement for this seminar. He checks the date. It's the same day. He checks the time, and it's starting in about 15 minutes. And he's only 5 minutes away from where the seminar is being held. So he kind of pieces all these things together. He just had his plans canceled. He doesn't have much to do. And he says, this is clearly a signal I'm supposed to go to this seminar. And so he does. And this woman comes out, and there are this spectacular fireworks show and this light show and these smoke machines. And she starts to speak about life and the miracle that is life. And every word she says is resonating with this man in a deeply, deeply profound way. Just 30 more seconds here, allowing for the front of the shoulder capsule to relax. And then eventually there's going to come a time when we're going to roll to one side or the other. Whatever side feels the most appropriate for getting off the prop, we'll roll that direction. Slide that prop off to the side for now. We won't need it for now. And we'll bring the knees back to neutral, kneecaps point towards the ceiling. Let's take our right ankle and cross it over our left thigh. And then with our left hand, we're going to reach for our left toe mound, and with our right hand towards the right shin. Now that's a pretty good reach. So you may need to lift that left leg to help draw the energy of that right leg closer to you. But we want to have left hand control and right hand stabilizing. And we're just going to roll the left ankle, the right ankle here with the left hand. So just moving the toe mound. So the toe mound is the mechanism of ankle requirement here. Just moving that in one direction. And then eventually we'll reverse that direction. And then we'll bring our ankle back to stillness. And let's just thread our fingers in between the toes. The left hand fingers in between the toes of the right foot, if that's possible. For some of us, our toes have just been trained. There we go. Trained is a nice word. Some of us, we've trained our toes that it's very hard. For me, it's very hard to get my fingers in between my toes here, right? It's just the shoes can box things in and we can create compression there. So if all the fingers aren't going in, just get what we can. And let's just offer a little space here. Maybe a little bit of squeeze. And then we'll release that right foot. So right leg's going to extend down the mat. Left knee is going to stay bent. And then the left knee is going to fall out wide. And this is just going to be a transition space. So we're not going to be here long, but I really like these little asymmetrical openings. And then we'll inhale the left knee back to neutral. Inhale the right knee back to mirror. And we'll take this to the opposite side. So left ankle's coming across our right thigh. Right hand is coming to the left toe mound. Left hand to the left shin. And then we'll start a circle. Just moving our encouraging movement through the ankle. And then we will reverse. I tried to cram 6 words into one syllable there. And eventually you're going to get sick of moving your ankle, and we'll bring it to a pause. And then let's put these fingers, try to lace the fingers in between the toes. Give yourself that little bit of separation, and then maybe a little squeeze there. And then eventually we'll release the left ankle, let the left leg extend down the mat. The right knee is going to fall out wide to complete the little bilateral expansion. And when you feel balance left to right, we'll bring our knees back to neutral. Left knee mirrors the right. Let's squeeze both thighs in towards the rib cage and just give yourself that little bit of hip compression. Beautiful. And then eventually, let the feet come back down to the mat. Let's bring our heels as close to the glutes as possible. Place the hands on the thighs. And I know this can be hard. So if you don't have the geometry that allows for the hands to get to the thighs and start to pressurize, use the blanket across the thighs to give yourself a little bit of extra thickness. Obviously, if you can't get your arm to straighten, then it's easy to just move the leg further away. We're looking to find the space where we can add like a 1/4 inch of an 1/8 of an inch of distance to the space between our shoulder joint and our thighs. And that is by straightening the arm and really using that tricep musculature to drive energetically the thighs away from us. So we just need to create the appropriate spacing so that the arms can straighten and it's forced energy away from us. And then let's relax and let the knees start to sway a little side to side. So as this woman goes on, everything she says, she starts talking about the miracle of childbirth and how that brought each and every being onto this planet. And she starts talking about how incredible it is that everybody develops into their own individual cosmos. And it's just ringing true. And after the seminar's over, he runs up to this woman and he says, what's next? And she says, well, what do you mean? He says, well, I loved everything you said. It profoundly impacted me. Where can I learn more about your teachings? And she says, well, next week I'm doing another seminar. And he says, oh, is it going to be about the same topic? He said, I loved it. She says, no, next week is about the miracle of death. And so he signs up right away. The next time that the knees come back to neutral, let's let the bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide for a little ah. Medial line expansion. And so all week he's waiting for this next seminar. He comes back. He's the first one to show up. He gets in, he sits down. This woman eventually comes on stage and she does her presentation. There's just as many fireworks and smoke shows and light shows as the previous seminar. And she starts speaking about the miracle of death. And the way she's describing the time on this planet eventually running out for everyone and everything, it's just profoundly impacting him. And he feels like each and every word is answering questions that he's so longly held. We'll give ourselves 20 more seconds here. When you're right, when you're ready, knees come back to neutral. Let's pull our thighs back in towards our rib cage, and we'll give ourselves a little squeeze here. Now with a real different level of awareness around that front hip capsule, that anterior hip capsule. And then we'll release our feet down. And let's take our blanket and we're going to find a roll here. So I'm going unfold to shelf fold, but this could be any depth. We're just looking for a roll that's supportive of the neck. So eventually taking a nice, neatly rolled blanket and placing it under your neck. The thickness of your blanket or towel is really going to change how much of the blanket you need to roll. So just make sure you make the appropriate choice so that you feel just a little pressure on the back of the neck, just a little encouraged elevation of the chin away from the sternum. And then we are going to take the arms out to cactus, the feet out to the width of the mat, and let the knees fall in towards one another. And then I want you to think about the alignment of the middle of the pelvic bowl, the middle of the belly button, the middle of the sternum, the middle of the throat, the middle of the nose, the middle of the forehead. And really make sure that any little tiny adjustments are made so that there is a perfectly straight line in the middle of the shape. And in many ways, that perfectly straight line is going to be communicated to you by listening to the body for the relaxation or from the relaxation. When you have those little places that are off center, off kilter, your body is likely going to be pulling itself towards center, pulling itself back towards alignment. And so when you do find that center line, your body should just melt as it relaxes into the shape. And so as the seminar goes on, he becomes more and more enthralled and excited by this idea. And eventually the seminar ends. And he runs up and he asks her if there'll be another one next week. And she says, no, I'm going on to the next city next week. She says, there is one, right? But I'll be moving on. And he says, oh, okay. So what's next? And she says, well, now you go live your life. And so that's what he does. He goes back and he gets into his groove, waking up, going to work, coming home, taking care of the home, family realities. And he keeps thinking and drawing back to these ideas of the miracle and magic of life and the miracle and magic of death. We'll give ourselves 60 more seconds in this shape, really thinking about melting in, letting go, and being fully at ease. And eventually, we're going to bring our knees out to the width of the ankles, walk the ankles back into line with the hips, the knees will follow. Slide that blanket out from underneath our neck. And let's let the knees start to travel side to side once again. As you're moving here, really think about that middle line integration from the sternum, belly to the pelvic bowl, and how that middle line integration can stay with you as you rotate. And so there's a physiological reality, right? Is that in perfect integration, we are designed to be able to rotate on the axis of the spinal column without any asymmetry, right? We should be able to rotate equally in both directions, but also without any shift, adjustment, asymmetrical alignment. Obviously, life makes that more challenging. But as you're moving here, coming out of that integration, really think about how your hips can rotate with the spinal column stack. And in turn, how the spinal column stack can rotate with the hip movement. And then eventually we're going to let both knees fall over to the left. You do have your prop, so you can place that in between the thighs and do so, especially if you feel like your hips are sitting off kilter here. And so as the days continue to pass by, and this man keeps thinking back more and more to this woman's wisdom around the teachings of the miracle of life and the miracle of death, he begins to feel more and more disconnected, more and more disassociated, and more depressed. And he's trying to rationalize this experience of getting this great wisdom and getting these great teachings and feeling connected to these ideas of being a miracle coming into the world and being a miracle leaving the world. And he just can't rationalize why he feels so stuck and so disassociated and so unhappy. And so he decides he's going to pack his car and he's going to drive the next town over, see this woman present the life seminar once again. And that's what he does. And he hears it and he feels connected and he feels vibrant and he feels alive. And he drives back home. And as time passes, he begins to feel less and less connected to the idea. And he drives back the next week to see the magic of death seminar, the miracle of death seminar. When you're ready, knees come back to neutral. And then we'll exhale our knees over to the second side. Landing again with that idea of alignment and integration. taking what we've done for the middle of the body and feeling what we've done for the middle of the body transition into a rotation. And so he sits through this presentation on the magic, the miracle of death. And he's alive and he's connected and he loves every word pouring out of this woman. But when things end, there's an instantaneous emptiness within him. And he knows it's because it's over. She's going to move on now to the next town. And so he runs up and he explains, I talked to you here, and I talked to you after this ceremony, and then I came back to another, and I came back to another. And she says, well, you must just like encores. And he laughs and he says, I'm having some troubles when I'm away from the teachings. And she asks what those troubles are. And he explains the whole situation. And she doesn't quite understand. Giving ourselves just 30 more seconds on the second side. When you're right, when you're ready, knees will come back to neutral. Let's pull both thighs back into the rib cage for the last time here. This time, really think about taking the medial edge of the thighs out to the lateral edge of the rib cage so we get just a little bit wider than we might normally be. And then think about creating that alignment from the sacrum to the navel of the throat, essentially. And then squeeze into the core just to create that whole spinal column neutrality. And release the feet down to the mat. Feet land, eyes close. Ask yourself if there are any needs, if there are any wants, if there are any pieces that are still missing that could be beneficial to you. And if there are, offer them. And if you're feeling ready, if you're feeling at ease, if you're feeling like some stillness, let's drift our way eventually into a shape where we can fully appreciate Shavasana. So this woman is confused and she says, so let me ask you a couple questions. She says, you understand that life is magic. It's a miracle, right? And he says, yes, absolutely. Everything you say about that makes perfect sense to me. He says, and you understand that death, it's magic. It's a miracle, right? And he says, yes, everything that you say about that, it makes perfect sense to me. She says, so where are you lost? And he says, well, I feel lost right now here doing my day-to-day thing, going to work. Am I just waiting until my time runs out? And she starts to cackle. She's laughing. She's like keeling over. She's laughing so hard. She finally rights herself, brings some movement to our fingers and our toes, and into our wrists and our ankles, up through the arms and the elbows and the knees, into your shoulders, into your hips, your neck, your head, your jaw, your eyes. Eventually, the entirety of the body will start to move, and we'll utilize that movement to transition from the shape we are in back into a seat. And in our seated space, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid. Eyes closed. And she says, so you understand being born is a miracle. You understand passing on is a miracle. What on earth would make you think that everything that happens in between isn't the same? And with our next inhale, we'll bring our hands together, our heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that you are magic and see how that impacts your experience? Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Sunday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you being here. I'll be back tomorrow night. We'll do a little bit of movement and we'll do this thing again next week. I'm going to recharge. If I don't see you tomorrow, have a beautiful week. Love the heck out of you. Mwah.